All right. So what ends up happening after the album, or is it during the album that leads you guys to have a split?
After the album is out, and you're working with a label that don't act like they know what to do with you, and when you're fighting against the machine so much, you get tired. And especially when you're not making the money you feel like you're supposed to be making. Yeah, and it's not like being at a job. You're not punching the clock. You're not guaranteed nothing. So that's when we just was like, all right, we didn't break up totally. We just gradually went our separate ways and started doing our own music, which to me is a gift and a curse because we eventually got back together in 2008 from the fact of all our friends in New Jersey in this park saw me about to get on stage without Tame. And all our friends were like, yo, I got to stop this. And DoItAll is one of the people responsible for that. And I love him to death. And I always commend him for doing what he did that day. And all he did was bring Newark and me and Tame back together. We shook hands that day in that park, that whole damn park. He roughed it. And right on cue, Chaos just threw on the music. And we was right back to 94 doing all of these songs again. And 2008, we was back. I like that fact. Right.
So there was no beef at any time.
It was just in certain interviews, Tame spoke on what his frustration was, and he was going through things. I think I could say without worrying about nothing. If you listen to Tame's music as a solo artist, or even with me and him together, and I think about the interview song, he say, "Rolling Dust with Dust," and people would hear that. And when he got by himself, he did the record with Cage, Leak Brothers. People make their own assumptions of things. And I think when we were separated, me and Tame had our own thing going on. So he was going through his personal things. And, I mean, even when, I didn't live with him. So I didn't say I knew everything that he was mad about. But when we did get back together, I told him, like, whatever you felt like I was responsible for that made us break up, I apologize. Because it's bigger to say that than to go back and forth between ourselves and say, well, you did this and you did that, whatever. All that did was cause us to be alone for 10 years. Both of us. But in them 10 years, we were able to find ourselves and have successful solo careers.
Did you guys talk at all during those 10 years?
No. Nope.
Wow.
Nope. And this is the ill thing about that was all our friends were still the same people that got us together. Separately, we friends with them. They, not saying they had to choose, but some people chose. And, but us not talking didn't lead to nothing from that. It just led us to, like I said, we just drifted apart. And I would just know he was doing stuff. He knew I was doing stuff. But when we was making records, that's what made it quiet. We were both pacified because we were doing things that we felt we needed to do, being just artists and making records and taking care of yourself. In that, again, I say that I hope that people got to understand who I was through my solo music and what I brought to the table. Not necessarily saying like I didn't bring anything to the table. It just shows that in our music solo wise, I was still trying to do music in a way of what I know to be like an artifact music. So I was just doing what I was doing alone on my own, what I would bring into the group. So I still wanted to have that in the music, because that's what people knew us for. So if people know Artifacts music, when you got Elder Sensei music, you're going to get the same grade, high grade, as if I was still in the group. And that's what I wanted to put out there to the people. You know, when you hear my music, it's not going to be too far away from what we built. And then Tame's music is a lot different than mine. He experimented a lot with a lot of different stuff. And that was good for him because that was what he wanted to get to the world. And same as I did, but this is me without L. This is me without Tame. Those 10 years was long to not talk to somebody. And we got a song. We got a song with my man, Foul Mouth Jerk. Foul Mouth Jerk, y'all. Foul, Foul Mouth Jerk. On YouTube. Put it back upon the scene. Back up on the scene. Me and Tame with Foul Mouth Jerk and my man Topper painting walls are dressed in tuxedo. Tame got an orange tuxedo on like in casino. I got on a tux with I'm looking like I'm selling bean pies.
Bean pies.
Me and Tame did that song in 2005. Foul Mouth Jerk was able to get us in the studio to do that. And that was the first song me and Tame made in years. And we shot it. We went to Asheville, North Carolina, shot a video. Nobody really knew me and Tame was back together like that. Like, oh, but we did that one thing and then didn't talk after that. And then we did the part. So Foul Mouth was the only one that was able to get us in the studio. And we knocked that song out. I'm telling y'all, Artifacts, Foul Mouth Jerk, back up on the scene. Y'all gonna love that video.
So if there was no beef, then there was just like frustrations from the label situation that happened to bleed over, basically.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, I know sometimes when you're going through something tough, you got to have who's responsible for this. I got to have a reason to point to like what went wrong, right? And it's just not always like life is just how it is. Sometimes things just happen.
Yeah, and the only thing that I got to tell people all the time, we got tired. We got tired, you know, and we were trying to keep up with this label that wasn't keeping up with us. And I remember the dude at the label told me, whatever y'all doing right now, this when Dynamite Soul was out. He said, whatever y'all doing right now, y'all, it's because y'all on tour. And because y'all pushing this record as far as y'all can take it. And I learned a lot in that. And me and Tame both did. And I'm looking at my battery. I don't have my charger. But I would say me and Tame learned a lot from that, where we kept everything internal. And actually, and even so much so when we made the third album, No Expiration Date, Tame heard the record before he died. And he was so happy with it. He was like, "Oh, you did your thing on this record." I said, "No, we both want a record, Rami." He's like, "No." He said, "Let me say this to you. You fucking did your thing on this record," because Tame was working at the time. So he didn't hear the record while it was getting mixed until he knew I was going to the studio to mix it with Buck, Jake Palumbo. But when he heard the final results of it from where we started and what we had, and he was like, "This is the fucking record, bro." He's like, "Man," he said, "from what this shit was compared to now," he said, "Man, I'm just glad he got to hear it because he heard the final product, but we didn't know what he was going to pass before it came out. But I was just glad he got to hear it and approve of it and actually like it for what it was."